Welcome to the, I don't even know what episode this would be, right? It's the next episode.
Right.
To Spilling the Tea.
Next episode.
In Studio D.
Are we even still in season 1, or do you?
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
That's why I say episodes. I can't keep up with it.
Me neither.
This being, a good time to introduce some of our folks is what we've been trying to do. So everybody else, Candace on the end, and Candace works more closely with these folks. So Candace, why don't you do a great introduction for us?
Introduce Miss Susan Allison. She's one of our science specialists here at the co-op, and we have Miss Annette Brown, our other science specialist. We're glad to have them on today.
Mm-hmm. And I guess seniority-wise, that would be Annette. How many years have you been here now?
I have been at the co-op. This is starting my 8th year.
8th year.
I was at the STEM Center 6 years previous.
Okay.
So we came from there over to Dawson. So
All right.
Awesome.
it's been a great experience.
And this is your
Second year. I've been here 2 years, so starting my 3rd year.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, I was at 8 years at Benton, and we worked together.
We did.
At Benton, I was at the Benton High School with chemistry and AP Physics.
Well, we're glad both of y'all took time to visit with us today. Since there are two of you, I'll kind of pitch out a question and get things going here, and answer it and then roll to the next one, I guess. But first and foremost, I'm always interested in how people got into education. What was the pull? People have heard this a lot from me, career too, but it was with that first career, being in schools, around kids or around teachers, that really piqued my interest. So, Annette, what brought you to the education world?
I remember all my life, I've loved working with kids. I babysat as a teenager, and then I had children early in life. And so then I went back to school. When my kids got into school, I did a lot of volunteering and working at the school, and I thought this is where I really ought to be. Prior to that, I worked in a daycare and did some work like that. So I knew my heart was always with kids and in education. And so I just took that as a sign that when my kids got in school, I had some time. I was a stay-at-home mom until then, for the most part. And so I went back to school, got my first degree, and started working instantly. Did a unique thing at UAM. We did a year-long internship instead of doing a semester.
Oh, wow.
And so I taught a whole year in 2nd grade, just like I was a teacher. It was really a nice experience. And then took my first job at Hampton in a 4th grade classroom, teaching little 4th graders, self-contained, and just wonderful kids. And then I decided I wanted to do more, so I went back and I have got my degree in library media and technology from UCA, and then moved into the librarian position for a while at Hampton. Then I moved to Nashville, where I taught 5th grade science, and then Betty Ramsey hired me for the STEM Center. I did a Strive program. I'm not sure if people know about that.
That's been a hot minute ago or two.
But that's still going, and they still have nice funds for teachers available to do those summer interns. And so I participated in that in the summer, and the next summer, Betty offered me a job, so here I am.
Awesome.
Susan, what about you?
It's really full circle to come back to Arkadelphia, because this is where I went to college. I went to Ouachita, and I was a chemistry major, and really began to start thinking, how do I want to use this? And when I was in high school, I went to a very small high school, and when I started my chemistry courses, I did not know how to do anything in the lab.
Right.
And I remember my high school experience, I'd not had any lab training and didn't know. And I literally had to stand there and watch other people pick up a beaker for me to know what that was. And so I decided then that I really wanted to offer more preparation for students at the secondary level so they could segue into STEM areas more easily. And so I majored in chemistry. I was a traditional teacher. I took the education hours, and then my last semester I did student teaching at McClellan.
Oh, wow.
In Little Rock. And I was getting married, and my family was all in northern Arkansas, so McClellan was a good fit between. Right. And that was very eye-opening to see the way the students responded and what I needed to do to get their attention. And I taught in North Carolina and Kansas before landing in
wow.
Benton.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really enjoyed those years. If anybody remembers the Principles of Technology class,
Yep.
I taught that in North
Oh, wow.
Carolina. So
Okay.
that was
Yeah.
way back. and then I wound up, I stayed home for years raising my children, then got
Right.
back into school. But I think it motivated me that I wanted students to be more prepared
Right.
for those college laboratory investigations.
Sure.
And I think that's what made me a little bit more rigorous
Sure.
teacher is I wanted them to walk in and succeed.
And be in a better place than you were.
Right,
Right.
right. I was holding on with
Right.
just
Yeah, I mean, I can
Figure.
certainly relate. I went to a small school too. Although we were in the lab, there was really no lab etiquette, which is a dangerous thing if you think about 16 to 17-year-old young men in there. And we took full advantage. I'll just say that on a couple
Imagine
occasions.
that.
And but it's funny. Both of you said something that I was going to get to, but it's about teaching is so much more than a paycheck, and I think the ones that not to say that teachers aren't decently compensated. I think again bias here for sure, but it's a pretty good salary, and sometimes folks get locked into a certain way. And that passion is no longer there. They're teaching at the kids, not to them. Point in case, as I was just earlier this morning, was walking across the street, and young lady walked up to me, and I'd known her really from a couple of different angles, like the professional world, and she said, "Hey, you remember? It was like 8 years ago. You first started talking to me about." What it would take for me to become an educator. And I say, yeah, I do. And she said, that was just you gave me the motivation that I needed, or the shove, whatever you want to call it. She said, but she, at the time she had worked a little bit with the chamber, but she was also one of the park interpreters for the state park at Lake Catherine. So anyway, she said the thing about it for her was, as she looked back on it, it was kind of what you were getting to. It's that the real world or next level experience, how to tie science in to so many different careers. And so she's now teaching, what she tell me, 9th grade AP Science at Lake Hamilton. She had been at like 7th grade or so. But it was the thing that we talked about is, there's work and then there's passion. I heard a guy last week say, it reminded me that, if you really love what you're doing, there's really no need to take a vacation. And I can honestly say, I mean, for sure, since I've landed at Dawson, I mean, it's a great place to work, great people to work with. And the other thing about kids, if you're not passionate about it, I feel like they can see right through that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Science, I remember, it was just always fun growing up, just getting to do all the labs, and I just see the pictures of everything that you guys do, and I'm like, that's so fun.
Yeah.
So you probably love it.
I had a little regret about a week ago on the fact that I never made it easy for my students because I ran into my first game of mixed doubles
Oh, yeah.
at Rebsamen. I was heading the tennis courts,
Yeah.
and there is former student
Right.
Sheridan, physical science teacher,
Yeah.
Jax
Yeah.
Hopkins, and he said, Miss Allison. And so the first set, I won, but in the second set, he was no longer having
Yeah.
mercy.
Yeah.
No.
No mercy.
Allison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he called me
Competition
Mrs.
rules.
Allison
Yeah.
the whole 3 sets.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry, Mrs. Allison.
and-
He aced me.
it's funny though. Once you get that moniker on you, in that generation, that's how they know you. I mean, I still have tons of folks call me coach. I mean, I was never a head coach; I was assistant coach. But and we'll be walking in, everybody look at me and go, "Were they talking to you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's a former student." So, but science, I'm kind of like Candace. In school was probably my favorite, just from the standpoint of being able to do hands-on type stuff, and it's gotten so much better, I think.
I think so. I think kids learn more if we engage them in a way that's hands-on, where they're interested and curious about the learning. And I think that's so important that we start that early. And so that's one of my big push that I've really worked hard to do these last couple of years, is really help teachers, those K-3, 4 teachers, really how to implement it well
Right.
within the literacy so that they're not doing something extra, but
Right.
kids can really learn and engage, and they're more
Right.
interested in and want to learn more,
Yeah.
right? If you're curious about something,
Right.
and so I try to really promote that. Really, STEM education in those younger
Sure.
grades
Right.
is really the focus, because that's
Right.
where they develop their identity.
Sure.
And there are so many STEM careers that
Oh, yeah.
they don't think they're capable of because
Right.
of where they come from, or if they're a girl,
Right.
we see that a lot. It's
Right.
kind of gender based in the
Yeah.
early grades, and so we've got to overcome that. And I think by engaging more kids in a holistic STEM way,
Sure. Oh, yeah.
that it because
Yeah.
life doesn't separate those subjects,
Right.
right?
Oh,
But
no.
we do in schools. We
Sure.
separate them out, but they're really they
Yeah.
really work better together
Oh,
than alone.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I have a daughter-in-law. She's, I guess, rolling into year 2 as a industrial engineer. And I'm telling you, they live in Northwest Arkansas. Actually, my son and her are both engineers. But the demand for engineering up there is huge. But if you're a female engineer, you can pretty much write your ticket. And so I think that's important, is engaging early, but also almost as important is making sure we don't lose them when we get to secondary. So what are some of the things maybe that have worked for you to do that?
Well, I was just immediately thinking of last year I went to Glen Rose and we did rocket launching,
Oh, yeah.
and they really liked that. They worked on their rockets, and we actually did the mathematical equations to predict where it would launch. And so we were getting in the math modeling, and that was kind of challenging. You know,
Sure.
that's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
the grunt of it. But then when they got to go and take it out and see it, fulfill their predictions, they had a lot of fun with that. And also, the biology classes have been tapping into the grant that Dr. Reyna put together, and we've been able to go into classes, and they can look at a problem like Huntington's disease. We did that at Mountain Pine, and they would go through the process of asking questions. What is it? And look at the structure of DNA. What goes wrong with it?
Right.
What are the symptoms? And then they would actually see the DNA strewn out on the gel electrophoresis, so they could go from a theory and a problem to solving it to see why did they have it and what caused it.
Right. Well, and then there, and so I've been an administrator from middle school on up, and by far middle school, I would say, is one of the tougher groups as far as engaging them. And the thing is, it's more about, I think, sometimes of, the adults letting go to a degree so the kids can pick it up, because if, for instance, the Garvin Garden thing, when we were out there, that was incredible to me, that not only were they looking for things, but I mean, just the whole process of walking through there, and to me, that's the approach we should be taking really with all subjects. Find a way to make that happen. I mean, believe it or not, my certification is fairly long, just because back in the day, some of the things that I had, I think they made codes up for, but I primarily oral communications. I started a TV program, that kind of stuff. So, but I take that back to the science classes early on in life, just from the hands-on piece and just the encouragement that I got. That's the one thing I did love about a small school. I mean, everybody in that whole building's pulling for you. So
that was kind of scary at Garvin Gardens when the kids were running all over the stones. And I'm not going to lie, I don't think we lost many.
Yeah.
They've lost a few.
Yeah. Well, the next group can go out and find them, identify
I
them.
was a little,
Yeah.
there were times, but they would just jump from rock to rock, and I was hoping, praying that it was going to go well.
Well,
I love that both of you you love to learn, you love to grow. You want to share things with teachers, which is going to in turn make a difference with several kids, that you're wanting to make them love science.
Well, and that's the thing I think really and truly about the love of science is, you have to be one step ahead of the teachers, but more like 5 or 6 ahead of the kids, really to make it relevant for a career that may or may not be tied to it, or but you know, the whole thing of engagement. I feel like science really lends itself to getting that.
Yeah, it's student centered for sure. It's about them and about that curiosity and what they want to learn, and not just about knowing facts, knowing definitions. You know, it's really about engaging them. This little boy at Magnet Cove at the middle school there in Karen's classroom, I believe he's 7th grader, and they were doing something on a tree that's destroying the rainforest, you know. And that kid, that unit was the first of the school, but that kid is so into that. He's been doing research all along. So every time I go, he wants to tell me what he learned or some problems, some issues he solved based on that. Well, I think we could do this, you know, and this would save the rainforest, or vice versa.
And
you
it
know?
may have sparked something that, you know, he loves and may do, you know, 15 years from now.
Right, and she said that's surprising because he really doesn't latch on to a lot, but he latched onto that, and so now he's into it, you know. He's into learning more about a lot of things.
Well, you know, and that's the thing. We serve 22 districts here at Dawson. We all the way from Kirby up to Benton and Bryant. But one of the things that's kind of been an eye-opener to me is the exposure piece to some of the smaller schools. I mean, we help all schools on different levels and for different things, but I think I took for granted, even though I came from a small school, is just that exposure piece. And with only having 2 science specialists, I know you guys are on the run quite a bit. I mean, we're talking, I guess, shop talk when we say specialists. So maybe we should spend just a minute there explaining what it is a specialist is and does.
Well, I would say our job is to really support our schools, thus helping teachers in their practice of teaching and providing them the confidence and the tools to do that, and supporting them in that growth, and fostering that with them, you know, because we can throw resources at a teacher all day, but if that's really not going to do anything but overwhelm them in a lot of cases, because they're like, oh, just another thing to do, right? And so it's about really supporting them in where they want to grow as a teacher and how that would best benefit their kids, because I think we have to have their buy-in and them want to do differently, you know, shift their practice to be more student-centered, focused instruction than teacher-focused. You know, we kind of are moving away from, and thankfully for the good that we're moving in the direction of letting students be the voice in the classrooms. But teachers need a lot of support in that, because you brought up earlier that we have those traditional teachers that have a certain way, and that's what they're comfortable with. But they're willing to grow and change, and that's one thing I get to see is some of the teachers that's been doing this for a while that really see the importance of this and really need the support and want the support. I know this, and I know this year I've been blessed with several more elementaries that I've started working closely with to make those changes happen. And so, and they're the smaller schools, you know, like Poen and Magnet and Benton Harmony Grove, and I've not done a lot of work with them in the past, but now I'm in there working in the K-6 classrooms and some of the other schools as well. So that's exciting, but it just takes them seeing that kids can do these things. That we have to have faith and hope that, and then support them and helping them realize that. And I think that's the biggest thing that I do.
And I remember, you know, even being a principal, it's hard because a lot of times, you know, when I taught for 15 years, I'm like, help me. You know, I'm just that type of person. Hey, come over here and, you know, let's work together. But sometimes everybody kind of gets just kind of in their bubble. And so as a principal, it was like, hey, we've got these specialists. And I mean, they're here just as support. And I think once the teachers realized they're really just here to support, I mean, it's not anything that's like evaluative or anything like that. So, I mean, I'm hoping that several teachers are watching and are like, oh, wow, you know, I'd love to call Annette or Susan and have them come in, because it is, I mean, I've witnessed it firsthand as a teacher, as a principal, that it's so beneficial to have the support. Even sometimes just to have somebody that you can talk to and if you need to vent to them for a little bit, as well.
Right.
I think it is important for them to realize how accessible we are, and there's no judgment. I mean,
Right.
every day of my
Right.
teaching life, I reached out for resources
Sure.
and help, and we are there just to provide that
And
support.
Right.
You guys are learning as well, and you're learning, and things that you learn at one district you can take and use at another, and so it's just, I think it's
Well,
great.
and I'll tell you too, the thing with some of our smaller districts, they have that financial block, I guess you would say, and do a great job of. I know you've written several grants, and had it not been for those monies there, probably wouldn't been able to expose those kids.
I think you wrote one for books.
And for STEM, STEM and literacy. And so we were able to buy supplies and books for those instructional materials they needed to incorporate those lessons. And
I mean, I think probably to the common person, everybody, for the most part, we hope, has been to school, and they just think those things happen.
right.
And the thing about, the education dollars, just like any other state or federal type fund, I mean, it's certain ways you can spend certain things, but I know you've done a great job of looking outside to find help. To, like I said, to me, I mean, again, I keep going back to Garvin Gardens, but I mean, as I look back to those kids, and for sure, some of them, they've never been to something like that, and wouldn't have the opportunity otherwise.
It was very gratifying to hear the kids that had never even been on a school bus.
Right.
Because during the pandemic,
Right.
their parents took them to school,
Right.
so they hadn't been on a school bus. They had never been on a field trip
Right.
because they were in kindergarten in March
Right.
when it started. And Rush Ventress was great to work with at Garvin. And we went, I don't even remember, maybe 16 days. We went
Right.
every Tuesday, Thursday.
It's amazing what they did and allowed everyone to come in.
Phenomenal. It was great. And I'm kind of hoping to do some of that with state parks this year.
Yeah.
Because we had the Lake DeGray
Right.
event, and the state parks have a class field trip grant that the state parks will pay for it. So, kind of hoping to work that in. But it was a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and they actually got to see Arkansas pollinators, which
Right.
is one of those second grade performance expectations is to explore. And I wanted it to be something that they would see in their backyard,
Sure.
not
Yeah.
just
Right.
on a video, not
Yeah.
just
Right.
in a book.
And again, that's how that exposure and engagement coming together. I really feel like, if we catch them early, we stand a good chance of keeping them hooked in. And I know a lot of the schools sometimes they get busy with the story of school. I mean, so that's probably one of the things I think that folks get back to me with feedback. They're most appreciative is those type things. It's the above the classroom level type stuff. And I can promise you, I've been to every corner of the state. There's with and without in every district, no matter how affluent or how low socioeconomic the district might be, there's still a divide in there. And I think these kinds of things pull those kids in there, gives everybody, I'd say it like maybe levelizes the playing field. Everybody gets a chance to participate.
Right. Well, we did something like that with Oaklawn this year. Myself and Monica Mobley, the STEM specialists from North Central Arkansas, we teamed up and we brought the kids from Izard County Consolidated School
Right.
with the Oaklawn kids, and we had monthly Zoom meetings where we'd spend an hour,
Right.
and those kids got to interact. But we would have STEM's people from diverse backgrounds so
Right.
that they
Awesome.
could see
Yeah.
themselves.
Yep.
We had athletes from U of A
Right.
that came on and did some things with them in one of our sessions. We had UAMS personnel come in and do some things in the education with them. And so we had some really great things, but those kids from two diverse areas in our state
Right.
were able to interact with each other and
Right.
see the likeness they had.
Right.
And how, even though these are inner cities kids and they probably haven't been out of that city much, then we
Right.
had these kids in a very rural setting, and it was just
Right.
an amazing to see how they interacted, and we're hoping
Sure.
to continue that
Oh,
again
yeah.
this year, maybe with some more schools, maybe add some more collaboration.
Yeah, and I think that's important too. A lot of times, again, I keep saying exposure, but sometimes we get locked into our own little corner and think that's how everything is or ought to be. You mentioned the word technology. With the pandemic and getting through all that, how did technology play into that? Because as we've said, science is pretty hands-on. And when, you had to wear 3 pair of gloves and 12 masks, you couldn't do much hands-on stuff. So how did you work through that?
I saw a mixture in different classes as I would go into different schools. So there was a little bit of differences, I think, the way that each school's administration approached science labs. But I also saw amazing number of our Dawson teachers going for it.
Oh, yeah.
And with abandonment, with masks on, nailing it. And it was very encouraging to me. One of the Benton schools that I went into with Mrs. Weston, she had chicks and eggs that were hatching in the spring, and they were talking about development. And it was encouraging for me to see what did happen in spite. But of course, there was great disruption. I've never used Google Slides in so many different ways. For kids to post images, videos of investigations, using all kinds of shapes. And, Google Slides, I think, has had a whole new meaning to me during COVID.
Well, and I really believe that probably one of the biggest positives in the world of education, it really forced everybody to start sharing great stuff. Not that they didn't in the past, but there was a little bit of healthy competition in there. But now I think everybody's more open to saying, hey, I did this. Have you tried it? Did it work? Yes, no, whatever. And so to me, that's been encouraging too, is the ability for somebody, like you're saying, maybe from another 3 counties over, heck, it could be across the world. We don't know, but that connection piece. And the other thing that you guys have brought up through talking is like how you are pulling the other subject areas in there. Talked about, literacy, math. And so to me, I think that's important because kids are kids and they're going to ask, well, when will I ever use this? So how prepared are you when they do ask that question?
I loved seeing, I was at Poen one day, and the teacher, Autumn Henry, had several Army recruiters coming in and talking about the science in reactions and diving into the periodic table. And I loved watching the students hear these experts in Army fatigues. And I think that made them realize that science is bigger than just their classroom. So I applaud their reaching out to different experts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's huge when it comes to that, because a lot of times, kids are going to say, well, I didn't even think about that being connected to that. I know when we were at Fountain Lake and we did the conversion charter, we had what we called the PSP in the early stages, which was the personalized success plan. And what that did was we got to sit down with kids and say, okay, I want to do this. And I never will forget that we had someone from the State Department come through the school, look at what we were doing, and they came back later and they told me, they said, well, that thing goes both ways. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I pulled it on my nephew, and then when we pulled it up and saw, he wanted to be like a game developer. But when he saw, statistics, physics, he said, I'm out. So, but, we started at 5th grade, just starting the conversation. I think on average now they say that a person will change, and I'm sure it's changed a lot with the pandemic and all that, but the last research I saw, they would change jobs somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 times. So any and everything that they can learn, I say grab it and go with it, right? Well, we try to keep these things a little short, but we also like to have a good question at the end. So thinking on the way over.
Don't let them off the hook. Don't let them off the hook, okay?
So, Annette, we'll let you go first. If you weren't teaching, what would you be doing, you think?
Oh, if I weren't teaching. I can't imagine what I would be doing. I don't know. I'd like to do some traveling, maybe explore the world, and
Right.
kind of see some things out there. I've been blessed to spend a couple of weeks in China, and that was
Right.
pretty
Yeah.
learning about other cultures and things. But I can honestly say I cannot imagine doing anything other than teaching and working with kids. You know, that even
Yeah.
in my private life, I've kind of adopted that motto too. You know,
Sure.
I'm raising my second set of child, was
Yeah.
not my second set. I've just got
Right.
one
Right.
extra now.
Sure.
But I would just say it would be something working with children in some kind of field, maybe mission fields, doing
Gotcha.
something like that. But
Yeah.
definitely something where I'm making an impact, because that's really my
Right.
goal, is to really try to make an impact for all kids, no matter where they
Yeah.
come from, you know, really making a difference and having them believe that they can do that, no
Yeah.
matter
Oh, yeah.
where they are in
Yeah.
life or where
Yeah.
they come from.
Yeah, I think that's important, you know, to really, you know, reinstate that to kids as much as possible. Really and truly, in today's world, no such thing as a boundary. I mean, I understand sometimes, you know, life happens, situations happen, but if they're willing to put in the work, it can happen. And so that's one of the tougher sides I think that teachers face today is not only getting that message out there, but convincing them, you know, it's attainable.
But I think it's also about building those relationships
Oh, for
with
sure.
teachers.
Oh yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Think the teachers that I work with, I've been blessed to know for several years, and we have these strong relationships, you know, and
Right.
I think that's really our starting spot with teachers, is really building those relationships and showing them that we are truly there to support them, and knowing that we're not just, you know, supporting them in the form of education, but if they have problems or, you know, need to
Right.
cry on our shoulder or
Sure.
something, you know, we're there for
Right.
that too. So I really think that is the key in really helping teachers, is really build those
Sure.
relationships with them and supporting them throughout
Yeah.
the process.
Okay, this is my last chance to talk because I want to do a shameless plug for the ASTA Fall Conference, October the 15th, Saturday at UALR in Little Rock. That's the Arkansas Science Teachers
Right.
Association Fall Conference. But if I was doing anything else, you heard it here first. I may be leaving. I have thought about going to the Ukraine and being a science teacher
Oh, wow. Yeah.
there. And I have thought about trying to network. And actually, I have contacted some people to try to network with science teachers over there. And I found online that where they get some of their education from Moscow or had.
Right. Yeah.
And so I kind of wonder if that's a window into supporting Ukraine.
Could be.
And we could
Maybe.
partner science teachers.
Right.
And I told my husband maybe next summer I could go do PD over there.
Yeah.
And he was not excited about it.
He said no.
Yeah.
He said
Well, but again, that goes back to the, you know, it goes back to the technology and the availability to make those connections. Because, you know, like I said, I've sat in on tons of meetings and, you know, people from foreign countries even. And so it's certainly, I mean, it's at
Wouldn't
our
that be
fingertips.
fun?
Oh, yes, it
Wouldn't
would
that be
be.
exciting?
It would be.
Yeah, it really would.
So, Candy, I never did ask you that. So, if you weren't in
Oh, so you didn't get
in
on the hot seat
education,
either.
I don't even know. I mean, I'm kind of like them. I mean, you're like, I don't know. I feel like if you're born to teach, you're going to do that. I will say that I was in college and, you know, Darren thinks I'm weird since I'm a math major, but whatever.
fine line, weird, nerdy, whatever.
Okay, whatever. I'll take it. It's okay. But I was in a algebraic structures class, which had no numbers the entire semester. And I was like, I thought I was a smart person, but I was like, struggled. And I went home and I was working part-time at a pharmacy. And I told my mother, I said, if I make a D in this course, I'm switching to pharmacy school. And she was like, what? Because I'd already had all these hours. And I said, if I have to take, because I still had to take a few above that. And I was
Right.
like, I can't even understand this. I mean, it was just, my mind was not grasping it. So I tutored and, you know, God had a plan. I guess he didn't want me to be a pharmacist. And I really didn't want to be a pharmacist. But so I made a C and survived it.
The rest
And
is history.
The
right?
rest is history.
Well, you know, fortunately for me, I got to do, you know, what I always dreamed of, and that was, you know, radio. Since I was that tall. And so I guess my junior year of high school, I got hired on at an AM station. And I worked weekends because I had my full-time job was landscaping. But so worked weekends, little AM station. And they said, yep, next summer we want you back. So like 2 shifts in, the building burns. I mean, to the ground. So we ended up having to broadcast that summer from like an 8x8 concrete block facility. That's where
It's not funny.
You were really
It's not
hot.
funny.
Oh,
Burned it
sure.
down.
Yeah.
Burned it
Oh, yeah.
down, DV.
Yeah, and but that's where the transmitter and the tower was, and I mean we had to borrow equipment to get us through until they rebuilt, and then so that really encouraged me to go get that radio television degree, and like she was saying, you know, you've got a plan, tell it to God, He's gonna laugh at you. But I take it like this: it was a blessing because I got to do what I wanted to do, and really enjoyed it. And as I look back on it, those skills that I learned have been so beneficial, you know, especially when you hit the admin side of stuff and you've got to get in front of people. And so that's what, I mean, I did what I wanted to do. And then, you know, finally, like I said, by God put me in front of those Red Ribbon Weeks, those career days and all that, going to a school I never will forget. I went to a small school, and again, I went to Cutter. So I thought, you know, we're small. I know we don't have a lot of things. I can remember the excitement of the first, what was it, Commodore 64 when it hit the business lab. Man, we were uptown then. We had one, you know. But going to some of those smaller districts in the role as, you know, that radio career, man, I just thought, man, things are a lot, could have been a lot worse. And, you know, somebody should do something to make that happen. And then, you know, that's kind of where I get into that Lily Tomlin quote. You know, she says, somebody should do something about it. Wait a minute, I am somebody. So that's how the history and education began for me.
And now he's making me do a podcast, and I had no desire.
And here we are. I feel
right.
like this is
And
the
he's
next
making you.
step.
He's making you guys do a podcast.
Yes, radio.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I think you know, you never lose completely, or I haven't lost that passion. I mean, me and another guy for years did the PA announcing at the state basketball tournament. So, and there's always opportunities. People will come and say, hey, can you either host or moderate or whatever. So, I mean, it's, like I said, it prepared me on a lot of levels for some of the stuff we do. Well, I will say we do appreciate you guys taking the time out.
Appreciate you.
And we're looking forward to the 22-23 school year, just, I mean, and what it's going to bring. You know, the thing that's excited me most recently is we're getting back, you know, to normal as much as possible, and to get to see those kids' face, you know, just light up. One of my favorite, and it'll go down as one of my favorites for sure. But we were talking about this before we jumped on here. Was, you know, we had small cakes. They had a drawing, and the teacher that won it got a free donut or cupcake party for their class. And the young lady that won it was an art teacher, kindergarten art teacher at Bryant. So
Awesome.
we got to go in, hand out cupcakes, get them revved up, and say, "Well, you kids have a great day." And that poor teacher, you know, they were probably eating crayons.
Recess.
That's right. Well, again, we appreciate y'all taking time, and that will wrap it up for this edition of Spilling the Tea in Studio D.